Hello, welcome to the Tales from the Dark Corridor. Make sure to like and subscribe. Be sure to put into the comments where you're listening from. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the stories. The Stairs That Don't Belong, told by Ranger Elias Mercer, Anaconda-Pintler Wilderness. I've been a wilderness ranger for 22 years, long enough for the Anaconda-Pintler Mountains to claim pieces of me. I know these ridges the way a surgeon knows anatomy. Every contour, every scar, every hidden danger folded into the timberline. I've carried lost hikers off cliffs, patched up bears' mistakes, and talked down more panicked tourists than I can count. But nothing in this wilderness ever frightened me, not until the stairs began appearing. The first time was 3 summers ago. We were searching for a missing teenager, Harper, 16, a reliable hiker. His tracks led us through dense brush, then simply vanished. But the dogs knew something was wrong. They stopped dead in a clearing the maps didn't even mark. Their hackles rose. One whimpered, and that's when I saw it. A staircase, just standing there in the middle of the forest. Stone steps, 12 of them, covered in moss like they'd been there centuries. No walls, no foundation, nothing to support them. Just steps rising into empty air. The forest felt wrong around it, like every sound was being held back by something unseen. I blinked and it was gone. The clearing was just a clearing again. I tried to forget. I tried to rationalize it. But the wilderness doesn't let go of its secrets, and soon the disappearances multiplied. 2 ultralight hikers vanished in early fall. Their GPS trackers flatlined near the same ridge. Their tent was found intact. No sign of an animal attack. No footprints suggesting a struggle. But I found tracks in the dirt, ascending, perfectly spaced steps on level ground. That night I told my supervisor what I'd seen. He shut his office door and poured us both a drink. His voice trembled when he spoke. "Every ranger here sees the stairs eventually," he said. "And when they appear, someone always disappears." I should have left, retired, found a new career. But service has a way of becoming duty, and duty chains you to the places you try to protect. So I stayed. The staircase in the dark. The next summer, lightning storms hammered the western peaks. A distress call came in from a solo hiker. A woman, terrified, repeating the same phrase over and over. "There's a staircase. It's wrong. It's wrong." Her voice dissolved into static. I reached her pack first, still warm. Her tracks led into the trees, then merged with another set, longer, deeper, but shaped like no boot tread I'd ever seen. They ascended into the air. A cold pressure filled my lungs. I followed. There it was again, a staircase, but not stone this time. Old wood, nailed together with rusted iron joints, steps coated in moss and frost despite the summer heat. It rose at least 20 feet, ending abruptly as if the rest had been swallowed by the fog. Something stood at the top, tall, emaciated, skin gray as ash, eyes hollow, black. It cocked its head in a smooth, unnatural motion. The air thickened, like molasses filling my chest. My every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't move. The world bent around the staircase. The creature took one step down, silent, weightless. I whispered the hiker's name. The thing paused, then retreated into the fog, dissolving like smoke. The staircase collapsed inward with a low, sucking sound. The woman's body was found 2 days later, floating in a pool of glacial runoff. Not torn, not bruised, just gone on the inside. I filed my report. Exposure. It was easier that way. The stare at my door. Weeks passed with no sign of the thing. Then one night, while sitting in my ranger cabin, the radio crackled. A whisper came through. Not words, breathing. Something was in the cabin with me. Floorboards lifted as if pushed from underneath. The temperature dropped instantly. White frost spread across the windows. A long, skeletal shadow crawled across the floor. I bolted outside and froze. A staircase now stood just yards from my cabin. This one was massive. Stone steps wider, taller, pulsing faintly with a sickly light. And atop it, the silhouette again. Watching, patient. It pointed upward. When I refused to climb, the shape behind me, inside the cabin, slammed the door open. Long arms unfolded into the doorway. Its voice scraped out my name in a breath that didn't belong to any living thing. I ran into the trees until dawn broke, and when I returned, the staircase was gone. But the next morning, another hiker family was reported missing, a father and daughter. We found their campsite untouched, and in the dirt, footprints, ascending, leading nowhere. The forest had begun choosing people deliberately, and the staircases were no longer waiting to be discovered. They were appearing wherever they pleased. The ascent. Then came the iron staircase, a towering spiral of cast iron rising above the treetops, humming like vibrating steel. A small shoe, the daughter's, sat neatly at the base. I knew what I had to do. I climbed. Each step pulsed with unnatural warmth, the air thickening the higher I went. Fog swirled in wild patterns, curved, folding, guiding me like a hand pressed against my spine. Then the world split open. One moment I was in the Anaconda-Pintler Wilderness. The next I wasn't. I walked through a vast, impossible landscape of black trees twisted into spirals. The sky churned in slow, deliberate swirls like a living eye watching itself blink. And in every direction, stairs, hundreds of them, rose into the fog. Stone, wood, metal, broken, pristine. Some looped into infinity, some bled. At the top of one staircase, I saw the father, climbing endlessly, unaware, trapped in an ascent that never reached anywhere. On another, the daughter stared down at me with pupilless white eyes. Her voice rasped with the entity's breath. "Elias!" The creature stood behind her, draping its long fingers over her shoulders like a puppeteer. Then everything changed. A stair behind me twisted like snapping bone, sending me forward. The entity reached. The fog constricted, and just before it could take me, a road flare ignited behind me in a blast of white light. Someone grabbed me, dragging me through tearing fog. My superintendent, Hale. The staircases collapsed like dying lungs, and the world went black. The return. I woke beneath bright morning light. The forest was calm, the staircase gone. Hale knelt beside me, shaking, staring like he'd seen something worse than death. "You were gone," he whispered. 3 hours, and I barely got you back. But I had seen days in that other world. I told him everything. The father, the daughter, the entity, the staircases looping endlessly, humming with hunger. Hale listened, too carefully. "Mercer," he said finally, "you're not the first ranger taken, but you're the first to come back in years." Others had returned, but none stayed sane for long. As he spoke, I felt a whisper curl around my ear. "Elias." Hale didn't hear it. I looked down. Something clung to my sleeve. I peeled it off, a scrap of the little girl's dress. On the inside were 2 words scratched in with something sharp. "Help us." My vision blurred. Hale urged me toward the trail, but I turned back toward the ridge. And there it was, a staircase, thin as bone, tall as the pines, with a figure, 2 figures, stood at the top, waiting. Then it vanished, but its whisper remained in the wind. "It's not over." And I knew then that the wilderness I had devoted my life to protecting was no longer just wilderness. It was a doorway, and it wanted me back. The final descent. The stairs want him back. This time he goes willingly. I didn't go back to the ranger station. I didn't talk to Hale, didn't fill out any reports, didn't submit to the mandatory psychological evaluation they require after traumatic wilderness incidents. Instead, I walked the perimeter of the cabin, slow, methodical, scanning the tree line for any sign of the thing I knew was watching me. The air felt heavier than before, quieter, strange wrong. A ranger spends years learning to read the forest the way others read faces. And right then, the Anaconda-Pintler Wilderness was wearing an expression I had never seen. Anticipation. It was waiting. The scrap of the girl's dress felt warm in my pocket, almost pulsing, beckoning me, reminding me of the 2 figures standing at the top of that staircase. The father, the daughter, trapped in a place where time bent like wet branches. If I turned my back now, they were gone forever. And maybe so was I. because something inside me had changed during the crossing. I could hear things I shouldn't, see things in the corners of the woods where nothing stood a moment before. The entity wasn't finished with me, and I wasn't finished with it. By late afternoon, the forest started to shift. Shadows lengthened too quickly, sliding across the moss like spilled ink. The birds stopped singing one by one until the entire wilderness lay under a thick blanket of silence. That was the signal. When I stepped outside the cabin, the staircase was already waiting for me. This one was unlike any I had seen before. Wider, taller, made of dark stone that absorbed the fading daylight. It spiraled only slightly, just enough to make the top invisible behind the treetops. And there, carved into the bottom step, were two words: "Come back." My breath tightened. The world held still as I placed my boot on the first step. A low vibration hummed through the stone, up my leg into my spine. The trees around me bent inward, as if bowing to whatever I was about to face. And then the fog rolled in, slow and deliberate, curling around the staircase like a living shroud. The forest disappeared beneath me. I ascended. The crossing. Crossing over a second time wasn't like the first. The shift came faster, harder, like being pulled underwater. A ringing started in my ears. My vision smeared. My skin burned and froze at the same time. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the realm was resisting me, not pushing me away, trying to hold me back from something worse. Then the colors inverted, the trees below melting into black streaks, the sky into a dull, sucking gray. A lurch went through my stomach, and the world snapped. I stood once more in the entity's realm. The landscape was darker now, colder. The black trees swayed though there was no wind. The staircases that surrounded me, countless as before, shuddered like living things. Some twisted into new shapes as I watched. Some collapsed. Others extended higher into the swirling gray sky. But something was different this time. The realm felt aware of me, focused. Every staircase seemed turned slightly in my direction, as though tracking my position. Above me, the sky spiraled inward toward a single point, and I knew without knowing that the entity was there, waiting. I had no weapon that could matter in this place. Only resolve, and the girl's scrap of dress. I started walking toward the nearest twisting staircase, the one where the father had been trapped before. But as I approached, the steps folded inward like a mouth shutting. A groan rippled through the realm. "No escape," a voice whispered behind me. I turned. The entity stood at the base of a nearby staircase, tall as ever, limbs dangling, eyes hollow. But now there were more shapes behind it, shadows with stretched limbs, silhouettes of other hikers, rangers, people who had climbed and never returned. Some watched me. Some mimicked my movements a split second behind, like reflections in broken mirrors. The entity tilted its head. "You returned?" The words were breath, not sound. "Good." I tightened my grip on the scrap of cloth. "Where are they?" The father. The girl. The entity stepped down. The ground shivered under its weightless advance. "They climb," it breathed. "They climb until they forget the ground. Until they forget themselves." "Bring them back," I said. The creature's mouth stretched slightly. Not a smile, but the memory of one. "Bring them back?" Its voice rippled the air. "You misunderstand." The staircases all around us began to pulse with a single, rhythmic beat, like synchronized hearts. "They are ours now." A wave of cold rolled across the realm. But I wasn't done. "They called for help," I said. "They're not yours." The creature's head jerked ever so slightly. A break, a hesitation. It hadn't expected that. I took a step forward. "Someone else once escaped this place, didn't they? That's why the staircases reach into our world. You're trying to pull something back." A ripple went through the shadows behind it. Not anger, recognition. "You returned broken," the entity whispered. "Like the others." I ignored the comment and raised the scrap of cloth. "Tell me where the girl is." A long silence. Then the entity lifted one bony arm and pointed toward a staircase far in the distance, so tall it pierced the swirling sky, vanishing into the spiral above. But as soon as I stepped toward it, the entity moved. Fast, silent. It appeared before me, only inches away, its hollow eyes swallowing the dim light. You ascend, it rasped. You descend, but you do not return. Its hand rose, slow, deliberate, toward my chest. The staircases behind it lifted, twisting, aligning, and I understood. The realm was preparing to consume me. Not just my body, my memory, my name, my place in the world. But something in my pocket grew warm. The scrap of cloth. No, not warm, burning. Light flickered beneath my jacket. The girl's voice, faint but real, whispered, "Don't let it take you." A scream tore through the realm. The entity recoiled. The scrap of cloth glowed with a pale, human light, something the realm hadn't seen in a very, very long time. I ran. I sprinted toward the sky-piercing staircase, the cloth blazing in my hand like a beacon. The entity shrieked behind me, its first real sound, and shadows swarmed at my heels. The staircase loomed ahead. I climbed. Higher, higher. The entity's claws scraped stone steps behind me. Shadows wrapped around my ankles. The world above spiraled into a blinding white vortex, and then a hand grabbed mine. Small, cold, desperate. It was the girl. Her white eyes flickered with something human. "Take him too," she whispered, pointing downward. The father crawled up the steps behind her, exhausted, nearly gone. The entity screamed again, a sound that tore cracks in the sky. I pulled the girl into the vortex. She pulled her father, and together we fell upward. When I opened my eyes, sunlight poured down through the canopy. Birds cried. Wind moved through the leaves. We were in the real world. All three of us. The father sobbed, collapsing into the dirt. The girl clung to him. But I looked back at the tree line. A staircase stood there in the morning light. The entity at the top, watching, angry but silent. It carved into the bottom step, in fresh stone, were new words. He will return. The last light. The entity has marked him. The realm is coming for him. This is the final stand. The girl and her father were taken away by helicopter before sunset, wrapped in blankets, surrounded by medics who kept asking questions they weren't equipped to understand. They were alive, exhausted, hollow-eyed, traumatized, but alive. That should have been a victory. It didn't feel like one. Because after they left, the forest fell silent again. The kind of silence the wilderness only makes when it's holding its breath. And in that silence, something whispered my name from the tree line. Elias. The staircase still stood at the edge of the clearing, shorter this time, only 7 steps high, as if testing me. The entity no longer tried to hide. Its silhouette was right there, carved against the sinking sun, waiting like the shadow of a fate I couldn't escape. He will return. The words carved into the bottom step weren't a warning. They were a promise. The mark. That night I tried to rest in the ranger station, but sleep wouldn't come. Every few minutes the lights flickered. My reflection in the window lagged a half-second behind, and the longer I stared at myself, the more I noticed the change. My eyes. They weren't hollow like the little girl's had been, but they had a dimness, a pale shimmer deep in the iris, like a reflection of a distant staircase. A mark, a claim. The entity hadn't followed me out of its realm. It had brought a piece of the realm with me. By midnight, I realized something else. Every direction I turned, a staircase flickered at the edge of vision, vanishing when I looked directly at it. The realm was no longer behind me. It was around me, leaking into this world like blood soaking through gauze, and it was accelerating. The decision. Superintendent Hale returned at dawn, pale and tight-jawed. "We need to evacuate this entire sector," he said. "I've seen it before. It's spreading." "What is?" I asked. He hesitated, then spoke a sentence that felt like a weight dropped onto my spine. "The realm is feeding." He explained that the staircases used to appear once every decade, then once every few years, then every year. Now they were popping up multiple times in a single season, because more people were seeing them. And the more who see them, the more they can cross. The more who cross, the stronger the realm becomes. "The entity doesn't just take people," Hale said. "It takes light, human presence, thought, The pieces of our world that hold it together. He stared at me. And you, Mercer, you're a beacon to it now. My stomach sank. I'm the doorway. Hale nodded silently. And doorways can be closed, and I said. Maybe, he whispered, but not from this side. The last descent. We hiked out before sunrise toward the ridge where the first staircase had appeared years before. The forest changed around us, trees twisting at slight, unnatural angles, shadows pooling in places shadows shouldn't be. At the center of a clearing, the staircase stood. Not a stone one, not wood, not iron, but something new, something vast. A staircase of light, pale, shimmering, infinitely tall, with each step glowing with a cold radiance that made the trees around it look skeletal. It didn't rise into the treetops. It rose into the sky. The entity towered at the top, no longer a distant silhouette but a full, terrible outline. Its limbs were longer than before, its form stretched, as if strengthened by every soul it had consumed. Its hollow eyes burned with something close to triumph. Elias, it whispered, return. The clearing pulsed with the same beat I had felt in the realm. Heartbeat, hunger, expectation. Hale stepped forward and handed me a flare. Not red, but white. Military grade. The kind used for emergency illumination at accident scenes. The realm hates light, Hale said. Real light. Human light. Not the false glow of its own creation. I looked up at the staircase of light. Won't this just feed it? No, he said. That light isn't real. It's a lure. Yours is the last it can't consume without your consent. I stared at the flare, and I understood. I wasn't supposed to destroy the staircase. I was supposed to destroy my connection to it, even if that meant destroying myself. Hale must have seen the realization cross my face because he grabbed my arm. Mercer, there might be another way. There isn't, I said softly. I stepped onto the first glowing stair. The entity's voice rolled down like thunder. Good! Higher and higher I climbed, the flare held tight in my fist. The air around me rippled, hot and cold, heavy and weightless, like standing inside a living heartbeat. Shadows swarmed the base of the staircase, trying to reach me, to pull me down. But the higher I climbed, the weaker they became, shriveling in the presence of the flare. When I reached the top, the entity towered inches from me. It lowered its head. You cannot win, it breathed. Light dies. Darkness remains. I raised the flare. Not today, and struck it. The world erupted. The shattering. White light blasted through the realm, searing, pure, human. For a moment I felt everything. The forest, the sky, the staircases, the shadows, the missing souls looping endlessly in their eternal climb. And beneath it all, the entity screaming. The light pierced its hollow chest, cracks spreading through its form like fractures in stone. Its limbs twisted, its body spasmed. It reached for me with a shriek that shattered the sky. The staircases around us exploded into dust. The realm fell apart, and I fell with it. The aftermath. I woke on the forest floor. Sunlight warmed my face. The trees around me were still. The air felt normal. Hale knelt beside me. You're alive, he whispered, tears in his eyes. The staircases? I croaked. Gone, he said. All of them. The entire wilderness is clean. I should have felt relief, but when I looked down at my hands, a faint pale shimmer still clung to my skin. A reminder, a scar, a warning. Will it come back? Hale asked after a moment. I stared into the forest, and for the first time in years, I heard birdsong, real birdsong. I don't know, I said, but if it does, I closed my fist. I won't climb next time, because now I knew what the realm feared most. Not darkness, not staircases, not hunger. Light, human light, the last light, 5 years later. What happens after the stairs fall silent? The Anaconda-Pintler Wilderness hasn't been the same since the day the staircases vanished. People don't disappear here anymore. Not one hiker lost without a trace. Not a single unsolved case in half a decade. The forest feels cleaner somehow. Lighter, as if a weight has been lifted from the air. New growth runs wild in places that were once strangely barren. The silence that once smothered these mountains has softened into something peaceful instead of predatory. Visitors say it feels like a different place. They're right, but the forest still remembers, and so do I. I never returned to full duty after the incident. Not officially. The department insisted I take retirement. Medical, psychological, spiritual, whatever label they needed. I didn't argue. Some battles don't end just because the paperwork says they do. Now I live in a cabin a few miles from Storm Lake, off the grid, not hiding exactly, just listening, watching, waiting in the quiet between seasons when the wilderness speaks loudest. I still hear things sometimes, soft echoes between the trees, a whisper in the wind that sounds almost like my name. But when I go to investigate, there's nothing there except pine needles and lingering sunlight. And my hands, my cursed, blessed hands, still shimmer faintly at night. Just enough to remind me what I fought and what noticed me. The father and daughter, the pair I brought back, the ones who survived the realm, went into witness protection for a year. Not because anyone was after them, but because no one could explain the things they said. The world has no place for stories with monsters baked into the soil. The father eventually moved to Idaho. The daughter started school again. She sends me a card every year on the anniversary. Just a simple message. Thank you for coming back for us. But once on the third year, she wrote something else. Something that chilled the blood right inside me. At night, I see stairs in my dreams, but I don't climb. I frame that card, not out of pride, out of caution. HALE. Superintendent Hale never returned to field duty. He said the forest felt different after that day, like it was breathing normally again, no longer coughing up staircases from another world. But the experience aged him. Silver overtook his hair almost overnight. He visits me sometimes, brings coffee, talks about normal things, the kinds of things people talk about when they're trying very hard not to mention the only thing that matters. But we talk around it anyway. We always will. Some events cut too deep to heal. Some truths never lose their teeth. The night of the comet. Last winter, a rare comet passed overhead, bright enough to cast shadows across the snow. The whole valley lit up in pale blue fire. I stepped out onto my porch to watch it. Something pure, something cosmic, something older than the thing that had hunted me. For just a second, I felt peace. But then, as the comet reached its brightest point, the forest behind my cabin shifted. Snow-laden branches bent inward. The birds stopped calling. And from the corner of my eye, I saw a staircase. Not large, not glowing. Just a simple wooden structure, half-rotted, rising 5 steps before stopping abruptly in midair. I turned my head fully, and it was gone. The comet passed, and the world breathed again. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was afraid, but because I knew what the sighting meant. The realm wasn't returning, it was remembering, testing the boundaries between its world and mine, testing me. It won't succeed, not while I'm still here, not while any part of me still holds light. The last light, final entry. I keep a journal now, not for myself, but for whoever comes after me, whoever takes my place in these mountains. They need to know what lurks when the boundaries thin. They need to understand that this place, this beautiful, rugged wilderness, is not empty. It is alive. And some of the things living here are older than the forests, older than the mountains, older even than the light my flare once cast. Tonight, as I write this final entry, the wind is still, the sky clear. No staircases line the edges of my vision. But the shimmer in my hands is brighter tonight, warm, steady, quietly pulsing. Is it a reminder or a warning? I don't know. I close the journal, place it on the table, and blow out the lamp. Darkness fills the room, thick and familiar. From somewhere deep in the woods, so faint it might be imagination, I hear a whisper. Elias. Not a threat this time, a promise. And I whisper back into the dark. I'm still here.